Good day, I'm Administrator Adam Southgate, now recording from the Order's new centralized command headquarters. While the facility is far from complete, with only 2 of the 5 wings being up to skeletal operations, enough has been done that I was able to move into my own new unit, which gives me direct monitoring and communication with each Order office. But anyway, today's lecture will be the first in a series covering the Urdd in more detail, starting with the youngest of the greater 5, Helfa Wyllt. So, I'll begin today, as usual, with a question. If you were faced with an enemy far beyond you in strength, durability, and speed, what would you sacrifice to close that gap? You know that this enemy will cause the deaths of innocents, and that time is a factor, but you also know that what you will need to sacrifice will end who you are. Is this a bargain you would take? Would you give up your life, give up your very humanity, so that others that you don't even know, who you will never know, may see another day? This is what today's Urdd confronts us with, but before I get ahead of myself, I'd like to mention the Order's Discord to help keep our hunters organized. It's broken up into different roles based on rank and which Urdd you belong to, if any. Along with this, we conduct our contracts through this system, so I hope to see you all there. Now, onto our hunters update. Firstly, and the only point to cover today, the Mother's Blood heist contract conclusion. As a quick recap, Alan Thorne, having forced unity amongst the necromancers of Wales, seeks to ascend to godhood. His plan, as far as we can tell, is to use Pathmarrow towers to kill almost all within Wales, then forcing benign spirits to mimic the recently deceased. Once done, he will then, using the artifact, Mother's Blood, force those benign spirits to believe that he is a god. Then sealing those spirits within himself, the belief of those entities will make his godhood a reality, and with those immortal beings sealed within him, we will not be able to return them to their benign state, nor will he ever have to worry about decaying due to lack of believers. However, the entire plan hinges upon the Mother's Blood artifact, both its retrieval and modification to work upon benign spirits instead of living people. So, we endeavoured to claim the artifact and find a way to destroy it before Alan Thorne could enact his plan. The contract was undertaken by hunters Jack Hardy and Alex Beauchard with the express permission of the Isle of Man's local government, the Tynwald. After arriving on the island and retrieving the needed gear for the operation, the two made their way to roughly where we believed the entrance to the underground was located. Thankfully, each had had the sense to equip MMBs before the operation's beginning, allowing them to see the entrance to the underground, as it was hidden, oddly enough, by a fey glamour. While the two did not feel they had the time to investigate this further, it was later discovered that an undead fairy had been sealed within the cave wall and forced to maintain the illusion. The two men were faced with some difficult spelunking, crawling down a 60-degree drop on their bellies, while the ceiling of the cave was low enough to scrape against their backs. Eventually, the two reached an open drop into a massive underground area shaped like a dome. The large circular room was featureless apart from 2 huge double doors built of stone and tens of thousands of bones in the image of a reaper. Past these gigantic doors, the two discovered an ornate and morbid temple dedicated to the very concept of death itself, and as they moved past its polished black stone walls, the sounds of mechanical creaking could be heard through the walls. The two men were assailed by multiple traps within the complex, however noted at various points holes at the perfect level to peer through and cleverly hidden within the complex decoration. After a rather unfortunate run-in with a spinning room, the two noted how a set of those holes had lights coming from the other side, but only for a moment. Acting quickly, the two smashed down the wall, revealing undecorated cave passages on the other side, lined with hundreds of levers and pulleys. To their confusion and surprise, they also found a reanimated skeleton within the hidden area of the temple, one that, to their amazement, could talk. It identified itself as Richard the Bones, a name it had chosen for itself. Its purpose was cruelly simple: to activate the traps and reset them after the victims were killed. However, after 700 years, the programmed spirit inhabiting the body, made of 206 bones, each taken from a different person, had gained some semblance of sentience. A deal was struck between the hunters and the construct. Richard would aid the hunters in the retrieval of the artifact, and they would take him from this place for the first time. As they continued further in, they were set upon by a path of transformation monstrosity, a hydra made of human flesh, each neck ending in a bouquet of screaming human heads. Jack, running with Richard the Bones, lured the creature back from where they came, Richard disconnecting his skull from his own body, allowing Jack to run more quickly, only carrying the skull. The two ducked down into the unordained cave where they had first found Richard. The hydra slammed into the crack they had entered through. Jack began wildly pulling levers and pulleys, activating every trap on the other side of the wall. The screaming was deafening as spikes, fire, acid, and crushing blocks ate away at the monster's body until it could move no longer. When Jack went back to reunite with Alex, he found him pinned against a door, a thin sword piercing his shoulder and held by a woman dressed all in white. It took some talking back and forth, but it was eventually revealed that the woman, Arwen Lord, was a Path of Life necromancer opposed to Alan Thorne. She revealed that she'd already run into a follower of Alan's within this very temple, Norman Mortis, however had been overwhelmed while fighting the Hydra that was his creation, while Norman had continued on. An uneasy truce was made between the two hunters and the Path of Life necromancer, while Richard the Bones hung from Jack's belt, seemingly enjoying the excitement. Entering the final room, the three beheld at its center a pillar with a bottle that overflowed constantly with blood. However, before they could make a move towards it, leaping from the ceiling was Norman Mortis, a Path of Transformation necromancer that had done extensive work upon himself. The battle was fierce, Arwen taking damage quicker than she could heal it, Jack losing his arm up to the shoulder and Alex thrown across the room. However, at the last moment and thinking quickly, Alex ran to the bottle, grabbing and throwing it at the Path of Transformation necromancer, the glass smashing against its body. The blood now covering it, it was powerless and could not disobey any command given, leading quickly to Norman Mortis's demise. Due to everything that transpired during this contract, I cannot give a complete summary of events after the contract. However, I will say that the artifact is now within our custody at this facility, where we are actively working to find a way to destroy it. This cannot truly be structured like the usual instructional videos, as this is not a topic on how to defeat the Urdd or Helfa Wyllt. Instead, it is closer to a brief history and explanation of the group, so we'll start at the logical place, the beginning. Helfa Wyllt does not have a typical starting point, as the sphere they were created to combat, the abomination, only began breaching a few short decades ago. At the time, we were taken completely and unforgivably off guard, as these creatures we had no experience of, no reference for, began appearing within the dark, unseen areas of Wales. The hunters of the time took up this cause, attempting to confront this new danger. However, their losses were far greater than their successes in this matter, with many torn asunder or irrevocably infested by creatures alien to our world. It was a lower mid-level member of the long-established anti-Fae Urdd, Cleddydd y Thraig, that would create the change. Robert D., at the time in his mid-30s, took it upon himself to find a solution to the abomination entities. He stripped the problem down to its basics. These creatures acted more like vicious animals rather than entities with some semblance of intelligence. They were far stronger, quicker, and more durable than most any other entity the Order had ever come across, and had no anomalous counters, like the Fae with cold iron. On top of this, they seemed to multiply from a single individual. His goal then was not to research these beings as one would an entity, but rather as a naturalist would research an animal, to strip away the magical thinking required for the other entities of the spheres and instead think in terms of blood, bone, and skin. With the Order and its hunters being stretched so thin, and with Robert being somewhat junior as he was only a journeyman, his early attempts to gain support fell sadly upon deaf ears, meaning that he would start this process alone. For the Order's part, the researchers were testing upon what little chitin had been recovered, attempting to find an equivalent to cold iron for this sphere, to no avail. Robert saw this as the complete wrong approach, believing that it should be approached from the material perspective, but knowing that his opinion held very little weight, he stole the smallest fragment of chitin he believed he could get away with from the Order. The piece was roughly the size of a person's palm, but it was enough for Robert to get started. Thankfully, his old master had given him a space upon his farm to work upon his own projects, a leaky, long since disused barn, but a place he could work in relative solitude. He didn't dare risk the small sample he had with failed attempts that may still weaken the chitin enough to invalidate further testing, and so, as a stand-in, he would test his creations upon 3-inch thick steel plates, until he was confident he had something that could punch straight through the chitin. It took weeks of work, with Robert eating through any money he had saved and borrowing thousands from his old master, with creation after creation being seen as unfit. Until, in a moment of desperation, he decided to strip the problem down to basics: kinetic force, using a shotgun slug roughly molded from tungsten. The first shot went straight through the steel, the second destroyed the old shotgun and much of Robert's hand, however the round punched straight through the chitin. It would take some time for him to recover from his injuries, but by the time he did, the gamekeepers had already begun creating profiles on the various entities' behaviors. To a great many of the hunters, they seemed random and difficult to understand. However, to Robert, he saw them for what they were: the actions of animals establishing territory. His first kill was a Repnea, and many followed shortly after, with Robert gaining a great deal of notoriety amongst the hunters. Many of the younger members of the other Urdd took notice, having lost their own masters to these abomination entities, drawing them into Robert's orbit. He was thankfully ready to share all he had learned freely, creating a situation where young hunters from different Urds would work together to take on these contracts. However, their cooperation was loose, with no structure or organization. But as they took on these entities, each would discover something new, freely sharing what they had found with any other they worked with. However, despite these successes, the loss ratio was still too high, and the entities, after being injured in battle, often became enraged, further endangering civilians. The Conrathid with High especially was an issue, as it was unknown where they were coming from and why they so closely resembled humanity. What was slowing their efforts was the decentralized nature of the quasi-group, with each still attempting to maintain their responsibilities with their original Urdd. The solution, at least in Robert's eyes, was the creation of a fifth greater Urdd. This did not go over well with the other four, as apart from losing many of their younger members, it would also create further competition for contracts. The High Druid at the time, feeling that a fifth Urdd was in fact necessary and going against the wishes of the already established Urds, okayed its creation, stepping down immediately after to avoid backlash for the Order. Since then, Helfa Wyllt has grown in strength, being roughly equal with the other four and developing a culture and means of operation all its own that we will cover in the next section. Robert himself did achieve the rank of Master, though far later than he should have, given all he had accomplished, due in no small part to the resentment of the Masters holding back his promotion unfairly. He never saw his 40th year, dying to the same abomination entity he first took down, a Repnea. Though he was no victim, bleeding out with the entity atop him, ready to bite down, he triggered an explosive device he had made for such a scenario. Today, the members of Helfa Wyllt have arguably taken Robert's message of self-sacrifice and ingenuity too far. However, first, a quick look at the modern group's culture. At the top of the group is the Meester Helfa. Unlike other Urdd, the leader is not elected, the position automatically going to the member with the most successful hunts at the time the previous leader either dies or steps down. The acting groups of 5, each group controlled by the more senior member, referred to as the Arwyn eth Helfa, their name for a master. Of the other 4 within the group, 3 will be of journeyman rank and the 4th will be the Arwyn eth Helfa's direct apprentice. Unlike what is common with other groups, the 3 journeymen will also, at one time, have been the Arwyn eth Helfa's apprentice. The 5-man squads work in a sort of rotation. The apprentice will be kept out of direct combat as much as possible, being instructed to observe and learn until ready to take on what they refer to as the trial. If successful, they will be promoted to the rank of journeyman, though will still work directly under the Arwyn eth Helfa, while they take on a new apprentice. At this time, after achieving the rank of journeyman, there will be 2 journeymen directly above them, with only the most senior journeyman being permitted to attempt a masterwork. This system creates a fierce loyalty and trust within the team, and allows them to function more as a pack of wolves than anything else, communicating wordlessly through simple gestures developed over years. Along with these 5-man squads, they will often be accompanied by Carmarthen Warhounds, an ancient breed of dog created by the early Order that the Urdd have since readily adopted. Helfa Wyllt, like other Urdd, maintain their own base of operations, in their case known only as the Lodge, a large wood-built construction located near Penarran. It acts as a second home for the group's members, with attached dormitories, a fully staffed kitchen, a smithy, and massive communal hall. Storytelling is encouraged within the group, recounting the grisly details of each monster fought and conquered, along with the personal sacrifices that needed to be made to take down the beast. Much of this bardic culture did not emerge naturally, and instead was institutionalized as a way of helping its members cope with both the physical and mental trauma of battle with abomination entities and the friends lost. One thing that must be made clear about Helfa Wyllt is the profound effect Robert's sacrifice had upon the group, the Repnir he was fighting in his last moments being uncomfortably close to a populated town. Due to this, the group see any loss of civilian life as unacceptable and their own lives as purely disposable. This does not mean that they throw themselves in with reckless abandon, but rather, if retreat would mean that others would die, then retreat becomes inconceivable. This attitude is what led to the adoption by the group of the Conrathid Rithai parasite, specifically keeping the small entity upon their person in sealed containers, ingesting them when a situation looks hopeless. 99% of the time, this causes a flood of adrenaline and rage, allowing them to take down the target before succumbing to their own injuries. However, where the 1% is concerned, this method tragically backfires, the hunter surviving their wounds and eventually becoming a fully transformed Conrathid Rithai entity. There are also rumours, though unconfirmed, of Helfa Wyllt using other abomination entities to enhance their own bodies in terms of both strength and speed, though shortening their lives by decades. We know that something is going on, as the members of the Urdd routinely score higher during physical examinations. However, it is not something we are in any great hurry to investigate, as to be pragmatic, we need what they can offer. Today, the group takes on about 80% of all abomination contracts and still maintain a higher success rate than is typical amongst hunters when going against this sphere. Of the 5 Urdd, they have the youngest masters and the highest rate of death, but at the same time are able to maintain and even expand their numbers due to both the high bounty abomination entities offer and the connection, training and camaraderie offered by the Urdd. While self-sacrifice is not an alien term to any hunter who works with the Order, Helfa Wyllt take it almost to the level of a complex. Much of this more extreme culture, however, could simply be due to how new the group is, with each member still trying to live up to the legacy of their founder. We at the Order sincerely hope that as time wears on... What's happening? All hunters report the Thryg Newers mounting. We're under attack.